Yeah, I through the printer, so this person. Yeah, yeah. You probably have a screen. Yeah. Okay, so it's now 12:01, so let's begin today's webinar. So everybody, welcome to today's BC Support Unit webinar, which will be about an hour in length. My name is Belinda Jampo, and today's webinar is entitled Available Tools to Develop Capacity for Patient-Oriented Research in BC, and it's presented by Dr. Macarthur and Pierre Zwiegers. So now before we begin today's webinar, I would like to acknowledge the ancestral traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations from whose traditional lands we are presenting today's webinar. Now, you may have noticed that you've been muted as you've joined the webinar, and that's just to avoid any background noise during the presentation. We encourage you to use the chat box located at the bottom right of your screen to share any questions during the presentation. The chat box, once again, is located at the bottom right of your screen. So you can either share your questions there, or you can use your microphone when you're unmuted at the end of the presentation, to share your questions. So I would also like to let you guys know that this webinar is indeed being recorded, and it will be located on our website, bcsupportunit.ca, under resources, so you can share it with your friends and colleagues. So we're going to do things a little different for today's webinar, and we're going to first have Dr. Macarthur present a bit on the educational curriculum for PORE, and we'll open it up for a short question and answer thereon after, and then we'll pass it over to Pierre, who will then go into the presentation portion of it. So let's begin. And I'm going to pass it over to... Hello, Colin. Perfect. So now we're ready for your bit.
Okay, thank you. We'll pull up the slides.
There we go.
Are you seeing the slides, Belinda?
Yes, they're loading, it looks like. Yes, okay. So it's, yes.
They're all up now, okay. Back up. Okay, so I don't know, I can see myself in my screen. Okay, and sitting with me is Nicola Jones. Aliza Crowley couldn't join us today. Aliza is a parent partner on this project and a parent of a child with a chronic condition, and she's been a parent partner in a project on Porch that we're going to describe over the next 10 minutes or so. We originally intended that Aliza would start the presentation. She can't make it today. She's actually indisposed and can't join us, but she had prepared a slide, so I told her I would speak to some of the issues that she thought were important in parent partnership with researchers. And so these were the things she wanted to share with everybody today. And that was to have proper partnership, and that involves asking parents what's important to them, getting them involved, not in the middle or at the end of a project, but at the beginning and throughout the project, having clarification and clarity about what parents and researchers need to know what to expect from each other, and then to engage parents in the study design, including selecting the right questions, having the right methods to test children, and any interventions that researchers are thinking of developing for their project. And the last comment was that research has to be accessible to children with disabilities. So I'm sorry Aliza can't be here, and she would give a much better, a more passionate and lived experience explanation of her slide today. But she did also want to say that they had a recent parent and researcher partnership meeting at Sick Kids, and it was standing room only, and the biggest item of conversation was educational tools to support both patients and families and researchers to get patients engaged in research. So that's where Nicola and I come in this patient-oriented research curriculum in child health approach. And the goal of the curriculum is to build capacity in patient-oriented research in child health through the development of an interactive online curriculum that includes video vignettes, has knowledge checks, certificate when people are done, but the main goal is to have research readiness, patient-oriented research readiness for all stakeholders. And that includes researchers, patients and families, clinicians, decision makers, administrators within hospitals. So Nicola and I are co-PIs. The initial funding came from a SPOR strategy for patient-oriented research. The Ontario SPOR Support Unit competition on building patient-oriented research capacity. We won, Nicola and I were co-PIs. We got a small amount of money to get this project off the ground. Since then, we've reached out and partnered with other partners, all of whom are providing support, some direct matching funds, some indirect support. The other, on the screen, you can see the other partners: the Ontario Child Health Support Unit, Child Bride Network, CCHCSP, the Canadian Child Health Clinician Scientist Program, the BC Support Unit, and the Ottawa Methods Centre. So to talk about the modules in the curriculum, each module has two co-leads, a parent and a researcher. Alisa is one of the co-leads on one of the modules. We have a broad, representative steering committee that provides both support and input along the way from development of the storyboard right through production to the final module. That includes Nicola and myself, patient partners, a couple from the Family Advisory Network at Zwiegers, Alisa and another individual, Child Bright. Frank Gavin from Child Bright is the parent, patient and family representative or partner on our committee. Researchers, clinicians, we have brought on board some instructional design experts from the hospital. Dr. Catherine Walsh is an educational research expert. I'll speak to her a bit more in a second. And then we have KT expertise from Sick Kids and Holland Brewery, which is a children's rehabilitation hospital at Sick Kids, for a KT plan once modules are completed. The good news, or good news, bad news. The good news that Catherine was successful in getting CIHR funding to evaluate the PORTS curriculum, both from a usability and an impact perspective. It's been really valuable for us to allow beta testing of the modules to ensure that we have the best possible modules, and they have all the elements in place for people to be able to use the modules in an efficient and effective way, and also to evaluate the impact of the curriculum. It's extended the timelines, but it has, I think, made the modules a lot better. We have 3 modules: Research 101, an introduction to patient-oriented research, in 2 parts, parts 1 and 2, that's targeted towards patients and families. We have Patient Engagement 101, an introduction to patient engagement and child health research, again in 2 parts, that's targeted towards researchers, and a module on ethics, ethics in general, and some discussion about some of the specific challenges in ethics in patient-oriented research. So those are the 3 main modules, 5 modules in total, with the 2 parts for Research 101 and Patient Engagement 101 in this curriculum, patient-oriented research curriculum child health approach. So I'm going to hand the following slides are just some screen grabs from the modules, and I'll just hand it over to Nicola to speak to the modules.
Great. Thanks, Colin. So the first module, which has parts 1 and 2, Research 101, as Colin said, is an introduction to patient-oriented research, and it's geared towards patients and families. And we really worked very hard. There's been multiple iterations, multiple stakeholder input to, I think, get to what is really an excellent module, which will be very valuable for patients and families. And so basically, as Colin mentioned, there's 2 parts. Part 1, which is what is health research and who is involved. And then part 2 goes through the timeline of a research study. And so from the perspective of part 1, this really just sort of summarizes the content and what we hope will be gained from going through the modules. And that is basically to define health research and patient-oriented research, so to describe those 2 aspects, understanding the value of patient engagement in health research, be familiar with key players in health research, and understand the difference between a research participant and a research partner. So we really wanted to make sure it was very clear that these are 2 different entities. So the module goes through all of these objectives. There's interactive sections. There's knowledge checks, as Colin said. We've got video vignettes as well to really bring home key points. So I think it's a really effective module, and the beta testing has been really well received also, I would say. So who is involved in health research? So this just gives you a screenshot of the wheel, which describes the different participants. So participants, research team, funders, regulators, knowledge users. And when you actually go through this module, you click on each of the items, and it describes, you know, the members of the research team. And then there's also a separate section where you can press on the key button, and it will say, how can patients and families be involved in this aspect of the research team, for example. So really nice practical information. And then again, also there's knowledge checks for all of the modules as well, to make sure that as you're going through the module, you are gaining the knowledge. So it's an active learning module. So part 2 really goes through the timeline of a research study. And I think one of the aspects that we wanted to emphasize was that sometimes it can take a long time from start to finish, and what are all those different aspects, and how can patients and families be involved as partners. So for that module, again, here's the objective. This would be the screen that you would go to. So be familiar with the key steps in a research study, understand how patients and families can engage as partners throughout the timeline, understand the potential impact of the health research, and be familiar with challenges and benefits of patient-oriented research. So we also wanted patients and families to understand that there's lots of benefits, but there are also challenges as well. And what are some of those challenges, so that people are really aware of what is involved in being a partner in child health research. So again, this would be the interactive slide from the module, the key steps. So develop, design, conduct, and share. And you would click on each one of those, and it would go through the steps for those timelines, and then also how patients and families can be involved as partners. So the next one is Patient Engagement 101. So this is an introduction to patient engagement, and this one is aimed at researchers. So, you know, many people want to have patient partners in research, but it's something that you may be enthusiastic about, but if you don't know how to do it properly, then it's not going to work out. So it's really geared to providing researchers with education on how to engage patients in research. So this is the start of the module, Patient Engagement 101. Introduction to Patient Engagement and Child Health Research. And, you can see we tried to make it very visually appealing, images to make it attractive and interesting for the reviewer to go through. So there's two parts. The first one is foundations of patient engagement, and the second part is patient engagement in practice. So the foundations and then the practical aspects. So this is just an example from the module on foundations of effective patient engagement. And again, similar to what I showed you previously, there's an interactive wheel. This is really showing the key elements involved in patient engagement. So part one covers the key principles, readiness for engagement, and the spectrum of engagement. And then part two covers practical aspects, challenges, and methods of engagement. And then the last module is ethics, and as Colin said, this is really just talking about research ethics in general, and then some of the challenges and opportunities particular to patient-oriented research ethics. And so the contact report is Linda Pyers, and that's her email address, and she's the program manager for CCH-CSP. And I think that's it, yeah. So, I guess, anything else you want to say, Colin?
The only last comment I'll make is that we need a learning management system to host the modules. The expectation is, the aspiration is that the modules will be available free and widely available on a learning, for free on a learning management system. SickKids has changed their LMS and is in the process of a new system. So right now we're looking for a temporary hosting LMS. If anybody has any options or ideas, please let us know. But as soon as possible, we'll have the modules up on the LMS for people to access, to get their certificate, and also provide some feedback, which will be some aftermarket usability testing on effectiveness and any issues people have with the modules. We have a KT plan in place, and available and broadly and for free. That's us done, Belinda. You want to take over?
Thank you for that. Now you may have noticed that I've unmuted you guys, and that's just to ask any questions that you would have for presenters at this time. So you can ask your question using your microphone or via the chat box. So we'll open it up for a few minutes to see if anybody has any questions about this bit of the presentation.
Belinda, I'm not seeing the screen. If there's any.
Your screen, yes. So we're currently viewing your screen right now, but I'm not sure where your slides went. So if you want to share them again, you could click them and put them there. You go. Yes. So if anybody has any questions, you can either ask now, or maybe we'll have Dr. Macarthur's information available when we put this on the website for people to ask questions there. So if I'm not hearing any questions at this time, let's move on to Pierre's bit of the presentation. So I'm going to move the presenter ball over to you, Pierre.
All right. There we go. How's that? All right. So thank you so much, Colin and Nicola, for a great overview. It's really exciting to see how those modules have come together, and I'm really looking forward to see how those get used and how they actually start impacting research projects that are moving towards that idea of patient-oriented research and involving that perspective on their planning phases. All right, so for the rest of this session this afternoon, I just wanted to relay a few other training products, outputs that JobRight produces during the year that is really applicable to anyone who is interested and available to any group or network to use. And so the three that we would be covering today is first is our patient-oriented research repository that we've been working on. Our online summer learning series of webinars that focuses on a few patient-oriented research-related topics. And then lastly, our Training Innovation Fund. So to get us started, first off is our patient-oriented research repository. And really what this stems from is funding supported through UBC's Faculty of Medicine was made available. And together, the BC Support Unit and ChildBright have put in a proposal for this idea. And we were fortunate enough to secure funding. And now we're at the phase we're trying to populate it and get it off of the ground. So really, what is this repository? And ultimately, what it is, it's a database of available research projects or opportunities that's affiliated with UBC and has a patient-oriented slant. So we are looking at research projects where patient engagement have been prioritized. And essentially, the idea here is that we want to connect or match students with available projects so that they can develop an understanding of patient engagement at the start of their careers, and hopefully it is something that's impactful to them as they move throughout their degree and ultimately secure any graduate level training. So why the need for patient-oriented for this repository? Providing research opportunities for undergraduate students and graduate trainees are really critical for these students to gain practical experience and additionally provide mentorship in the various aspects of patient-oriented research. BC really does have a strong presence for patient-oriented research projects, as many of the local projects affiliated with our sites focus on incorporating the patient-partner perspective throughout the life cycle of a project. And ultimately, initiatives like this are intended to facilitate a systemic shift in research that ultimately aims to enhance capacity for patient engagement throughout the research process. So how does it work? The way we have it set up is we ultimately designed it to be a two-pronged approach. First off, we would have our research projects would fill out our online submission form where they would submit their project description. And really the sort of data we collect there is some information on what qualifies their project as patient-oriented, what is the role that the student would play in their project, and have them list discrete functions or tasks that the student will work on during a predetermined period. And then lastly, to indicate whether the funding that they are, the project that they are listing is a funded position or a voluntary position. So what we're hoping to capture here is if any research projects were interested in, say, something like a directed study student, they could pre-populate this database with some suggested projects, and that would cover some of the voluntary positions that are covered, and ideally, if they do have a funded position, this is one way for them to connect with trainees as well. On the flip side, we would have students who would ultimately review those submissions, and if they are generally of interest to the student within their field of expertise or their research interests, we'll connect that student with that particular project and have them relay any additional details that the project investigator had requested, so such as a CV or a resume or some other survey that might be preferred. Alternatively, if a project that was listed, if there wasn't a project listed that was of interest to the student, we've set it up in a way where that candidate can then fill out a submission form where they indicate their availability, their research interests, and we collect these inputs in an offline database with the intention that once a project that matches with their keywords or their key interests once that comes online, we would broker that connection again with the investigator and connect the project and the trainee so that they can further assess whether it's a good fit and then onboard the trainee as needed. So we just launched this earlier this year, and as of right now, we're just trying to raise awareness of the opportunity and have projects start taking it up and using it if it is of any benefit to them. At this point we seem to have a much higher interest from trainees, and we've been able to collect quite a number of their profiles. So we're eager to start populating it with some additional research projects and making those connections happen. So I guess another point I should mention as well is that there's no sort of application deadline for these. We are accepting profiles or project descriptions on a rolling basis. So at any time, if there is interest, a researcher or a trainee can fill out the respective form and have their data on file for when a project does align well with their interests. So where can you find us? Well, our website is at porr@.med.ubc.ca, and if you were to navigate there, you'll just find a bit more information on the repository. You'll find links to the submission forms as well as some relevant information of what qualifies as a patient-oriented research project, and a few other details. Alternatively, if you have further questions about this that we don't cover during the Q&A session later on in this webinar, feel free to email us at porr@cmmt.ubc.ca, and we would be happy to reach out with you at that point and take the discussion further. All right, so next up is our webinar series. So how this all started up was that in 2018, we piloted a series of introductory POR webinars that really was just intended to make it easier for stakeholders to enhance the understanding of the various principles of patient engagement. Since at the time we found that our in-person modules were a bit more of a challenge for many of our stakeholders to attend. And really what this series offered was a really top-level examination of what patient-oriented research is and the various factors that drive or inhibit effective patient engagement. We then explored various aspects of how and where within the research cycle patient engagement can be practically incorporated, and sort of ended off with examining what some of the ultimate expected benefits of patient engagement were. And that went well. It was really well attended during our period. But responding to some feedback that we had received that we were soliciting over most of the year last year, there was an indication for a strong need to tackle more practical and discrete topics related to patient engagement, and so that led us to launching our 2019 offering, where our sessions are co-facilitated by a researcher and a patient partner, and this really has gone a great way to incorporate a more diverse perspective on these various topics. So for 2019, we're just partway through our 4-part series, and if there is any interest from the audience to attend our final 2, they're still open. We have spots available for registration. I'll relay the connection details for that in a bit. But as you can see from the 4 topics we have listed here, the speakers that were kind enough to facilitate these sessions for us are tackling quite a wide array of practical considerations for patient-oriented research. So, sorry, I have a calendar update. So In the two remaining sessions that are coming up, we're looking at a practical guide for this idea of reciprocity between patient partners and researchers, what that looks like, and the elements that need to be put into place for that to be an effective partnership. And then later on in August, we have a great session planned for focusing on including First Nation partners in a research project, and that's really great to have more of a reach for that webinar. Now, having said that, if you are interested in attending or at least reviewing the recordings, we do have all these on our ChildBright YouTube channel. So feel free to navigate to our website or to our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to track our 2019 Summer Learning Series playlist down. But if not, you feel free to get in touch with me. So as I mentioned, feel free to sign up for any of our remaining sessions. You can find that on our ChildBright's event page, or just follow the link that we have on the slide. All right, so that brings us to our third output that we were hoping to feature here today. So last year we launched this training initiative that we had termed the Training Innovation Fund, and really what it came down to was that it was a $10,000 funding competition that aimed to develop innovative training activities that go toward enhancing capacity for patient-oriented research. And what these funds were available to support were outputs that foster patient-oriented research training or mentoring within projects that were focused on pediatric brain-based disabilities. So we had an open call. Sorry about that. We had an open call, so the funding opportunity was not just restricted to ChildBright members or ChildBright affiliates. So we tried to cast as wide a net as possible and had this open for submissions from trainees, researchers, and patient partners who were involved in any type of research project that was focused on childhood brain-based neurodevelopmental disabilities. And we did have quite a lot of interest in our call, and even though we had only intended to fund one project, the training committee ultimately opted to tag on a second project for the 2018 cycle. And I guess just to give you a bit of a sense of what we were looking for, the type of projects that were produced, I just wanted to briefly profile these two projects to give you a sense of the expected outputs that we hope to have available to the broader patient-oriented research community, either by the end of this year or sometime during the next. And subsequently, just to give you an idea of the types of projects that were supported. So first off it's a project titled Learning Together, the use of simulation to enhance and enable authentic and meaningful research partnerships. That is being produced by a group out of Holland, Bloorview in Ontario. And really the aim of this project is to develop a suite of 5 simulation-based learning modules and associated facilitation guides that are designed to address complex challenges experienced by patients and researchers while engaging in this patient-oriented research partnership. And the great thing about these modules are that they are designed with this co-learning approach in mind, so that during a lunch and learn session, researchers and partners would come together, and with these sort of simulated experiences or simulations that they review are able to work together and sort of identify perhaps where in the simulation the patient engagement efforts were waning or weren't as strong, or where they were not as authentic, and as a group together brainstorm perhaps alternate strategies of how that particular situation could have been approached. On the second project that we were supporting is run out of Western University, and it's titled Development of a Partnership Model for Collaborative Research Involving Youth with Disabilities. And what the project ultimately aims to accomplish is to pilot a model for meaningfully engaging youth with disabilities as collaborators in an integrated knowledge translation research project. And what they're planning on doing is to actively engage youth and other stakeholder groups as core collaborators in the creation of specific training modules that are intended to train healthcare providers on how to approach childhood disability as an interaction between physiological and social determinants of disability. Now, we do expect to have a funding cycle announcement later this fall. Our training program is currently developing what that proposal would look like. And once the announcement is made, I do expect, as I mentioned, I do expect it to be in the fall, so sometime in late September, early October. And again, the opportunity is open to all, and if you wanted to stay updated on when that call is open, feel free to check out our Training Innovation Fund page on the ChildBright website, or if you want to get updates of when it actually goes live, feel free to subscribe to the ChildBright newsletter. That should include that update when it does launch. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of the content that I was hoping to cover. Feel free to visit us at our training site, and if you wanted to connect with us, feel free to email me at the contact listed on the screen. I'll be happy to connect with you afterwards and continue any further discussion. All right, so that brings us to the question side, Belinda. So if there are any questions, I guess we can field those.
Thank you for that, Pierre. So as Pierre stated, your microphones have been unmuted, so you can ask your question using the microphone or the chat box. So do we have any questions in this room, online? Give it a minute or so, Pierre, to see if anybody has maybe is thinking of a question for you. I don't see any questions coming, so I'm guessing maybe there are none for now, but as you can see on here, Pierre does have his email contact there, so you are able to send him an email using that email, and also when the presentation goes on our website, perhaps we can have a bit of information at the end of that where we will have some information there so you can contact them. So once again, thank you so much for that, Pierre. We really do appreciate that. And yeah, I guess that's it for today. So Pierre, do you have any last minute comments as well before we end this?
No, thanks for having us. And yeah, I just want to plug that patient-oriented research repository again. It would be great if we can connect some interested students with some great projects.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.